Great. So welcome everyone. Glad to have you today. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about lean startup, and I'm very happy to introduce our professor of lean startup, Scott Landow. And Scott actually comes from a background which is quite comprehensive, sitting on a board of directors, been CEO of several companies. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Scott to fill in his bio and kick it off. So Scott, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Philip. It's a pleasure to speak, or actually to talk about stuff like this. I have a diverse bio to the extent that I'm unemployable. And because of that, I've always built my own companies. And that's how I became a serial entrepreneur. What I wanted to talk about today was how we consider startups, how to get started. Where's the very beginning? Where's the touch point? Things like that. Because there's an old school and there's a new school. And old school is how I did a lot of projects that I've done, and then new school is really what I've learned since I started teaching about 11 years ago. And I swear by, and the differences are night and day in what I do. So I put together some slides, and I'll make sure there's time for questions and things like that. Philip, how long do you want me to go before we get to questions? Because I can time it.
Sure. I think about 35, 40, maybe 45 minutes would be great.
Oh, okay. All right, I got plenty of time. Lots of stories to tell. Okay, so let me give you a quick history. This is one of the companies that I've built. This is one that's actually still public. It now goes by the name of FitLife. I left in 2008, but the story that I'm going to share with you, I think, has real value in terms of what we're talking about today. It was originally called Bond Labs. Crazy reason was because I walked into a cell phone store to get a new cell phone, and they had just come out with that flip. I don't know, I'm old, so I don't know how many of you remember the flip, but it was like stealth looking. And so I opened it up and I closed it, and I opened it up and I closed it, and I looked over at my son and I said, Bond, James Bond. And by the time the guy had rung it up, I had decided that the name of the company was going to be Bond Laboratories. So normally you have great reasons for what you call what you do. I don't. I'm specifically looking at the products that we built while I was involved with the company. When I started the company, I was CEO, chairman, all that wonderful stuff, took it public. Just to give you an iteration of how we got to where we were, because I think it kind of ebbs from what we're talking about and where you can go. So I don't remember what I just finished doing at the time I started Bond Labs. And my wife suffers from debilitating migraines. My sister suffers from debilitating migraines. So it's something that I'm really familiar with. And at the time I was playing around with a great scientist, chemist, whatever you call him. And he said, well, there's an element out there, or an ingredient called feverfew. And feverfew does amazing things for migraine headaches. I said, well, that's real interesting. I'd love to learn a bit about it. Maybe I can turn it, maybe that'll be our first product. And what I learned about feverfew was two things. One, it grows like a weed, almost like you look on the side of a road, you'll see feverfew. And then it's like the for lack of a better term, it's the whore of gardens. It grows, it crossbreeds with everything. And so the reason that it wasn't being used is because nobody had that particular strain of feverfew. And we found a place in Minnesota, I think it was Minnesota, that had their own growing fields and things like that enclosed. And they were growing it from the Hepton style happenstyle variety, which was the original variety from England that had worked. So we got samples and decided that this could be great because it was a life-changing kind of product. And the ones that I've done best with have been where I felt like I could make a difference in the lives of the people I care about. So there are 35 million Americans that suffer from migraines. 2/3 are women, one third are men, but the majority of the age is between 35 and 45. That was enough for me. So what did we do? We bought a 2-year growth cycle of the feverfew plant. We played with all kinds of different formulas and things like that. We created packaging. We, in the meantime, I gave it out to friends or people that I knew that had migraines for feedback. And I decided that we would, this was going to be our first product, develop this great looking box, and went to market with it, with a story, with a great brochure, with all the things that should make it a success. And had made, that's the path I'd always gone down, was identify a product, develop it out to the point where it's something that can be sold, because you don't want to have customers who are looking to buy a product, but you haven't really made it a product yet, or so I thought. And I think I put about $100,000 of my own money in at the time. By the time we went to market, sales never got past $10,000. And this was back in 2006. Not terribly, I mean, discouraged, but not terribly discouraged. But I'd come out of another public company that I'd built, so I was able to play. I had some wiggle room, and I hired a guy who had been president of a nutraceutical company that sold to all kinds of retailers. And I figured, well, my forte was going to be in developing, and he was going to be sales. Except he wasn't. That's another story, and that came later on. So while we were trying to get traction on Migratool, and we were on radio and all kinds of things like that, my son came to me. All right. There we go. He was a freshman at UC Santa Barbara, and he had his own problem. And he called me up and he said, "Dad, I have this big problem. I can't concentrate in my, I don't know, marketing class or some class I met at 8 o'clock in the morning." And so I said, "Well, I got a pretty easy solution. Stop partying so late and get up earlier, go to class, and you ought to be doing really well." And he said, "Well, that's not really the problem." He said, "I get in there and 8 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock in the morning, my body is not functioning." So I went back to Bob, who had my scientist guy, who had developed the Migratool for us, and he said, "Oh, well, I've got this great product that I kind of put on the shelves years ago when I was looking at energy, and I just couldn't decide what to do with it." And so he said, "I have this formula." And he said, let me make up this product for you, and you can send it off to your son, and let's see how it does. So Bob makes this bag, literally a Ziploc bag full of white powder, and ships it directly to my son's dorm room at UC Santa Barbara. Now you can imagine what receiving a white bag, or a white bag going through the mail, a Ziploc white bag with powder in it, going back, this is probably 15 years ago. Yeah, 15 years ago. But it made it through the mail and he got it. And so I said, "What you need to do, Austin, is this is a powder. And the reason it's a powder is that most of the things that are going to have a positive effect on your energy dissipate the minute they have contact with water. So we could make this as a drink for you. We could bottle it or put it in cans and things like that. But the only thing you'd be getting would be sugar, water, and caffeine. Everything else that really makes a difference would degrade by the time you got it. So what we did was decided, I said, try this stuff out, mix them up before you go to class, and tell me what you think. Tell us what you think. And I get a call literally after the first day of him using it, and he said, "Oh, Bob's a genius." I said, "Well, I know that. He's a scientist." He said, No. He said, "This is incredible." He said, in Isla Vista, UC Santa Barbara, everybody rides their bike. He said, 7:45 in the morning, I'm riding my bike to class, and I'm just singing at the top of my lungs. I'm feeling great. No crash, like traditional energy drinks do. And, about lasted a good 4 hours. I said, "Well, that's great." I said, "So why are you calling me?" He said, "I need more." And I said, "Okay." So I went back to Bob, and Bob made probably a week or two worth of supply, which should have lasted the whole semester. And 2 weeks later, I get a call from Austin saying, great stuff, but I need more amount." And I said, "What, are you dealing this stuff up there? I mean, what's going on?" He said, No. He said, "I've been using it the way you told me to. And then I met these girls down the hall of my apartment that I could never speak to before, but they had somehow heard that I had this stuff. And so they wanted some. And so pretty soon, what I thought was going to take care of the whole semester took care of 2 weeks." She said, and I met the most gorgeous blonde, blue-eyed girl you've ever seen. So I went back to Bob, and we made him a lot more. And Bob said, "We should make this a product." And so I said, that makes perfect sense. So what we did was we created as you'll see on the right-hand side there, there's a picture of a box, and then there's a cup that we had, and you see these little tubes. These little tubes were sealed, and they had the powder in them. So you got all the benefit of the ingredients the minute right when you were going to drink it. So you open it up, you pour it in, and mix it up. It tastes great. I mean, great taste. And that was the result. And so we had this product. So we thought, where can we go with this? First thought was we should go to Costco. Costco had a similar product, but nowhere near as good as the one that we had developed because of the vitamins and things we put into it, called Zip Fizz. But Zip Fizz was in every Costco. And I don't know, retailed for like $20 for a package of 20 of them or something like that. I don't recall. And so through a contact that I'd had from a prior life, I was introduced to one of the buyers at Costco, and we bring it in and we explain the proposition and things like that. And she's really enthused, and she said, "Great, let's try some." So first we have to have, we're going to have it packaged in a package that will work on our shelves. That'll take up a certain amount of space that we're going to allocate. And we know how much we sell per square inch. So we'll watch it closely. And that was how it would work. So part of the thing was you had to have your laboratory inspected by Costco, which is about a $4,000 to $5,000 endeavor. And there's no problem. We got our lab all done and everything. And we were invited to do sampling. And you're familiar with sampling at Costco, where they have the horseshoe that goes round and round, and you walk around, and most customers grab at least one or two and come around 2 times. We thought we were launched. We had built enough for an initial shipment if the product's accepted into Costco. And so I had about another $100,000 invested in this. What I didn't know was that Zip Fizz the owner of ZipFed was up in Portland or wherever Kirkland is, where Costco is, and had a personal relationship with the buyer up there, which was unbeknownst to us because we were going to the buyer in Southern California. And week after week, we would do these we'd do these demonstrations, and we'd get positive feedback and no order. And then no order. And I couldn't figure it out. And finally, through the grapevine, we learned about this buyer up in Washington who had a relationship going back to high school with the manufacturer of ZipFizz, and we didn't have a prayer. All we had was a competing product, and it might be better. It was better. But it didn't matter. So now I'm $250,000 into Bond Labs. Eric, the guy I'd hired to be president of the company, who had the sales experience, the depth in all this, said, you know, right now, what's really going on in the energy world is there may be 500 brands of the drinks and cans and things like that, but there's this energy shot coming in. It's a 2-ounce bottle, and you've probably all seen it now. It's with, I don't remember the name of it, but the big one everyone now gets. And he said there are only about 5 or 6 on the market, and there's no logic or reason to who's where, etc. 1 hour, no, something hour energy, 6-hour energy, something like that. 5-hour energy, that's it, because we called ours 6. And so he said, I think we should try that. So for a minor investment of maybe $10,000, all we did was knock off that product, put it into our own packaging, flavor it better, and we went to market. We decided that we needed to have some kind of momentum going, because if you're familiar with the convenience store market, and that's where these sell, there's about 12 by 12 square inches of selling space for energy drinks. That's it. And it's right on the front counter. And so you're fighting for some very valuable space, and getting a national retailer or something like that to pay attention was an uphill battle. We played around on things, and we discovered that we hooked up with a national sports agent, and they represented people that were in Supercross and things like that. And they said, why don't we try and bring this to 7-Eleven? Not 7-Eleven, to AM/PM, not 7-Eleven. And so we went and met with them, and they said, we have a problem. And I'm starting to see this consistent pattern of problems. And I'm thinking really hard that the really important aspect of a product and getting it to market is is a solution to somebody's problem. And it's not necessarily what we think it is, it's what they perceive it to be. Well, AM/PM was a national sponsor on Supercross, which is like a motorcycle race. You've seen them probably Anaheim Stadium and places like that. And because of what was going on, they're owned by BP Petroleum. Their advertising budget had been cut completely, and the money that they used to put into Supercross and putting on the logo, putting their logo and everything on riders in Supercross, they didn't have. And we said, well, what if we buy it and we share it with you? And that's eventually what we did. We bought the worldwide sponsorship to an individual by the name of Chad Reed, which I'll explain later, from Australia. And we shared it with AM/PM, and our deal with AM/PM was we would be their exclusive 2-ounce shot for at least a year in all of their stores. Well, now this is completely different than how you would have thought you start a business. You didn't go out and try and build a sample and then make prototypes and all kinds of things like that. Instead, we went out and we solved somebody's problem, and by doing so, we did north of $1 million the first year that we were out there, and we ended up giving Dwayne Reed, which is New York City, all kinds of convenience stores throughout the country and things like that. That was the beginning of Bond Labs. And that was what was the momentum that, well, it took a lot further than that. But at that point in time, I left. They eventually got out of the shot business because it had gone from, we were number 6, I think, in the country on AC Nielsen in terms of sales, which was incredible. But 500 new brands had come on the market because there's no barrier to entry. Anybody could make a 2-ounce shot in these little plastic containers and put it out there, but you still only had 12 inches by 12 inches of selling space. And so every new brand went out to a convenience store and said, here, we'll give it to you for free. And then if it sells, you'll buy more. And since there was only really 1 or 2 really national franchises or operations of convenience stores, there's no you couldn't get into one place and lock it in. And what we discovered was that who's going to turn down free merchandise? And we exited the business. We exited the business with a really, really nice profit. And so we had Bond Lab set up. We had Fusion Energy, which at the time was still going on. But I also recognized something that I had learned a long time ago, which is my bandwidth, if there is such a thing, is if a company is A to Z, from concept all the way to what the maximum it can be, I'm kind of an A to F guy. I'm an ideas person. I persevere. I'll stay up 24 hours. I'll do all those other things. When a business starts to run on its own momentum, I am trouble because I'm disruptive. I'm looking for something new to build, create, involve myself in, and I really have no place. Having learned that on a company several years before Bond, I left Bond. They went on. In fact, the company's still in existence. Today it's called FitLife. It trades on some stock exchange. I think it's at $14 a share still, and it paid for my kids' college for all of them, and nobody's going to miss a meal for the next several generations. But what I learned first and foremost from this was that building a business was about resolving problems. Now, I wish somebody had told me that 5 years earlier, and who knows how many millions of dollars, because besides Bond, I started several things in my past. And that's the main thing I want to talk about today, is really, well, first let's start with a question. Although I guess I don't know if you guys can voice in or not, but the question that every entrepreneur should be asking when they're thinking about a product is, which comes first? The product, the pain, the customer? And it is never the same. It's not the product. You need to have an idea to go to market, but you really need a customer who has a pain currently. You need a pain that needs to be resolved quickly, and it's urgent. And if such a thing exists and you have the capabilities to develop a product, or you have a product in development, that's your entry into the marketplace. Nobody shared this with me. Oh, I've got some chats, just a second. About the same. Okay, customer comes first. No, but the customer doesn't. You don't know what the customer is until you meet somebody who has the pain. So until you have the pain, you're not a customer. Customer comes second, pain comes first. Or so I learned. So, got to get back again. Okay, here we go. I bring you to this book called Nail It and Scale It, which is the main textbook that's used in my class and in a lot of entrepreneurship classes all over the country. Great book, completely different from old school entrepreneurship. And I credit it really with new school entrepreneurship. And when I started teaching at Fullerton, I was introduced to it, and it was like an aha moment. Where was this, 15, 20 years ago when I started my first business? And how could I absorb it? How could I teach it? It became like a Bible in terms of a process. So these are kind of the differences between old school and new school. Old school is a traditional model, and that's what my generation was raised on. And depending on your age now, you may have been also. The entrepreneur has an idea. They discuss it. They raise money from friends and families and fools. They find a location. If it's going to be a physical business, they develop a product. They perfect the product and add features for broad appeal. And then they go to market and they try to sell it. The flaw in that whole system is that you have already invested, let's say in my case, 100 grand or more on a finished product that you've determined is right for the customer before you have customers. And one or two friends are going to lie to you and tell you you just invented the greatest thing since sliced bread. So that's not really a justification of it. What Nail It and Scale It talks about is this concept of lean startup. You begin by nailing the pain. From the pain, you nail the solution. Once you've nailed the solution, then you conceive an idea of how a go-to-market strategy. You nail this business model, and then you scale it. But what you have that's different is, on the first one, you waited until the very last stage to go to market. What Nail It and Scale It has you do is, as early as possible, for the least amount of money, they have you build a prototype that is good enough to get responses from, and go into the marketplace and find customers or find people who will be early adapters long before you really want to become and launch a national brand or even a local brand. You're going to find customers who essentially want to help you. And that's what you're looking for. If you can find 5 or 6 investors who are interested in helping you actually develop it as you go along, let's say, okay, we'll go back to Fusion. I would have involved people in terms of how to flavor it. The biggest thing I would have done is the people that I talked to at that early stage. We confirmed the pain. Everybody was dead to the world in the morning. They don't call it 7-Eleven for no reason. They do their most business from 7 in the morning to 11 in the morning. And it used to be coffee, and now it's energy drinks. What we found, and would have been wonderful to know several $100,000 earlier, is that the people who want energy want a product that they go into the store and they actually can start to consume it before they even get up to the register to pay for it. So if you make a powder, and your powder requires water, and then you've got to open up your container and you've got to pour it into the water and then shake it up and drink it, you have way too much way too much time that your customer's not going to give you. And so here was just a minor thing. It was a convenience factor. The problem wasn't just they weren't awake. The problem was they weren't going to invest the time that we were trying to enhance what it could be. And that's what we learned. We learned that by starting out early with people, by developing a product that was to nail their solution, not ours, their solution. Because remember, we made a powder that was so positive, so good, that it had tremendous effects, but there wasn't a consumer in the world that was going to take the time to use it. We poo-pooed those 2-ounce shots until we saw how much money was being spent on 5-hour energy. And with a very minor investment, we went in the marketplace. We replicated in the concept of the category. We made a better product. We put more things in it that stayed in it. But the truth of the matter is, we weren't ready to go to market until we had the support of a large enough number of customers that could make it into a brand. And what that required was, among other things, we got AM/PM stores. We also, in early days, we were distributing into the Hard Rock Hotel in Vegas. They used to put it in their mini bars. And that was through another contact. And we went slowly but surely. But because we were finding customers who had not just the pain, but they had the same sense of urgency that our product was going to fulfill. If that makes sense. And that's kind of the difference between old school and new school. Old school is you go through all the labor and effort of raising money, building a prototype and building a large enough inventory to go to market, and then you actually try to start selling. And new school is you spend very little on a concept, and then you work your way through the people that already are experiencing the pain, and you try and become their solution, and you nail it down from there. So, let me go through very briefly some of the parts of the book that, like I said, to me, it's like a Bible. You spend a lot of time, all of this is long before you go to market. It's, in a lot of cases, it's before the time you have identified a large enough population that might be your customer. But you do a preliminary customer hypothesis. And with that, that's when you start testing. You start testing then with the least amount of a finished product possible for people to get an idea, but not for a complete product, because when you put a complete product in the marketplace, let's say that we had made a shot and we had flavored it with it just had a horrendous flavoring from the amount of in some kind of ingredient that you put in, caffeine primarily. We could have gone to market with great packaging, a product that worked, but we wouldn't have known that it would have been rejected by customers by one aspect, which happened to be flavoring. And so you slow down in the beginning because you have to figure out bits and pieces. You compartmentalize and you look at your product from, okay, what do I have? Do I have a flavor? Okay. Do I have a reaction to it? Is it the size? Is it the convenience of how it's used? All kinds of things like that. And that's what you learn by going in this new school of lean startup. There's so much work you can do during the process of getting to market and scaling, as opposed to going through everything possible and then only to go out and put out a product that nobody is interested for just one aspect of it. One of the things you consider is who's Waldo and Wendy. It's what I use my class to talk about when we're trying to figure out who's the customer. Who do we think they might be? Gender, age, education, hobbies, politics. Where do they shop? Where do they live? What do they play? What motivates their decisions? Good questions before you go to market. How do we build great? You do interviews. One of the things that the program teaches you to do is to go out and interview people to find out what they really think. Now, the problem with most interviews, well, two things. One, most people hate to go out and talk to somebody they don't know or go out in the public. They'd be much happier sitting in their office and just, doing it by email or something like that. You can't conduct interviews without getting face-to-face with people. And then how you ask your questions are critical, because most people picture it's like going on a job interview. People lie. They don't lie because they're intentionally lying to you. They lie because they're trying to tell you what they think you're looking for an answer of. And that does no one any good. So it's not just recognizing that you need to do interviewing, but it's being able to learn how to write questions that will bring out real answers, that will tell you real information that's valuable that you can move forward with. You have cooperative conversations as opposed to like a job interview. You don't say, well, I'm looking at your resume here and you've done this. Then, well, how is this job or how is that job? That's all reflex responses people have. It's white noise. And so your questions have to be more in terms of engaging somebody in a discussion and then bringing it around to what you're interested in. One of my favorites is if you're doing something in the food category, and I've ended up doing a lot of businesses in food category. You don't go out and ask somebody, do you like Neapolitan pizza? What you go out and ask somebody is, can you tell me about your favorite experience? What's the best pizza you've ever had? So you're not having close-in questions, you're having very engaging, open questions. And when they start telling you about their favorite, because people love to talk about themselves, when they start telling you about their favorite pizza, you now are getting honest information and things that you can probably go back and refine whatever your product is and continue on. Follow-up questions. There should be something you're trying to learn from people, but they aren't necessarily the opening question in an interview. You should have about 3 to 5 things you want to learn about. And because you haven't memorized this, because you know your product so well, you can have a conversation with somebody about what they want to talk about and look for the opportunities to bring in the questions to find the answers for the things you need to know. But once again, this is new school. They didn't have this years ago. My first company that I built, we went through $15 million in 10 years and eventually folded it. I mean, it did very well for a while. But there's a right way and there's an easy way. And the easy way is not to go out there and tell a customer what the product should be for them. You really have to listen. So I put together just some last things. I guess I'm not going to talk for 45 minutes, but that's okay. But some thoughts that I pulled from the book and from teaching and things like that, that I wish somebody had shared with me as I went in through this process. First of all, if you're not 100% in, save some time and go home now. I've been a judge on quick pitch contests. And the thing that loses me, regardless of where someone is in a pitch, is when they have 2 products or 2 possible directions or to anything. Because what that tells me is they're not committed yet. If they're committed, not committed yet, they certainly shouldn't be asking for money. They're not going to get money. When you go in to do something, you have to be 110% into one direction. That, I mean, it may be evolving, but you have to be, that's the pain you're going to solve. And you have to, and this is the solution and the means in which you're going to learn to fulfill that solution. When you start a project, this will take everything you've got. You can't have a full-time job and develop a product on the side. You can get enough information, you can probably get enough feedback to build your excitement, but until it's a passion that you're willing to quit your job for, don't do it. Don't waste your time. I mean, I've been at Bear Stearns for 10, 12 years doing investment banking, knocking down nice, really nice money. And I quit Bear Stearns when I started Bond Labs. I quit. No salary, no nothing, 4 kids, all in private school, all that other stuff. You have to be all there. You can't just be sort of, kind of, maybe I will. Listen more, talk less. That may be the best advice I ever received and the most consistent advice I ever give anyone. Until you're in a conversation with somebody and you're letting them talk about something that's important to them, they're not really participating. You can't go in and say, I've just invented this great thing. It's going to make your life wonderful. Let me tell you all about it. Because they're not going to listen. You don't have their attention. You need to listen to them. You need to listen to them a lot. And when you get to a point that you think is an opportunity to introduce why you want to talk, that's great. But it doesn't start at the very beginning. I taught all my kids growing up in our house at the dinner table. It was always discussions about business. I was always selling something, starting a business or whatever. And they all learn that you have to listen first. You have to listen. Embrace people who think different. My first business that I built, I thought I knew everything. And I set out to basically set the rules, create all the images, all the artwork, the manufacturing, you name it, I was going to do it all. And the problem is, go back to that thing about bandwidth. I don't have an A to Z bandwidth. And more important today than it was 30 years ago is that you don't have time anymore either. You used to believe that you had a 5-year window to bring your business to market and solidified your place. It doesn't work that way anymore. I mean, think about how fast information flows. If you had 5 years, 30 years ago, you probably have 3 to 6 months now to make a difference in the marketplace. And what that comes down to is you have to surround yourself with people who have skills that you don't. And you need to make them your partners from as soon as they become viable. Not everybody on first blush really ends up being one of your partners. But you need somebody, like I had a chemist. I had a marketing person. I had a national sales manager. All these had different skills. Some were good at working with going to people. Some were good with working with components or ingredients and things like that. And what I recognized was I wasn't really a compartmental person at all. I was good at having an idea and trying to keep the wheels on the bus moving in terms of looking at the idea and keeping it focused. But by no means did I have what it was going to take at the very beginning to launch a business. So where it used to be, go out and you're going to have an idea, you're going to build it into a business, you're going to sell it, you're going to sell things and stuff like that, and you have all this time to learn the hard way. You don't have any of that time anymore. Odds are, if you come up with an idea, there are 6 people throughout the world that you have never met, never heard of, and never even seen on the internet that are working on the same concept. You don't have all the time in the world. You need a finished team that can no longer rely upon, that can just not rely upon you as a leader, but can take off, can hit the ground running on their specialty and bring it together into a team. And that's what enables you to come to market. Don't work in a vacuum. A recent experience with one of my sons at work that I believe in is that he had run into a problem, and he waited 2 weeks before he told anybody because he thought he could solve the problem. The minute you have a problem, raise your hand and tell everybody, because you're surrounding yourself with people who might think of a solution that you can't. So you don't get time, and you don't get to be in this vacuum of just you. When things aren't going right, let people know immediately. The people that count, the people that matter, that are working with you, let them know immediately. Put it on the table the next morning, and at least make them aware of the fact you're looking for a solution, as opposed to looking for a solution that you already know in your head or can find. You don't have a monopoly on solutions. That's just what that's all about. Everyone has a different bandwidth. I've talked about that. But no one is an A to Z player. Don't think that you can take an idea from start to finish, because you're kidding yourself. There are some that do. There are entrepreneurs who do a lifetime project or product, but they're constantly refining and things like that. But what they discover pretty early on is they have to surround themselves with people who have subspecialties that can work on their own without you knowing how to do what they do. If you think you're an A to Z player, you're going to end up working by yourself in a small little office someplace, and never really develop into a business that's worth pursuing and rewards you the way you want. Most of your ideas are not going to work. Just think about that for a second. Most of your ideas aren't going to work. That's a good thing. We learn best from the things that don't work, not from the things that do. We'd like to think we learn from our successes, but nowhere near as much as we learn from our mistakes. And there's no such thing as failure. Failure actually is something that occurs when you stop, when you quit. As long as you're still trying, you didn't fail. You just learned more that got you closer to being prepared to succeed. But yeah, there's going to be a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, F, G, all the way through. Your best things that you can possibly learn are going to be from the things that didn't work. Access to money is a two-edged sword. This comes out of the book also. You will stress without it, and you will make horrible mistakes with it. When you start out, you never have enough money, normally in those cases, unless you have an inheritance or something like that, a silver spoon. But for the most part, the things you'd like to bring into your business, you can't try all of them because it's not realistic. You're not going to have the money to do all those things. And you're not going to find the money to do all those things unless you've begun to show some kind of momentum. So yeah, it's great to be able to go out and raise money about friends and family and wherever else it might go to. But understand, when you get to the point that you bring in a venture capitalist, you have more money than you know what to do with. And that's as bad a thing as not having enough money. Look at, what was it? Was it Lyft? One of them, though, one of the two car things, when they went to China, blew $3.5 billion bringing ride sharing to China, and then got out and left the marketplace. They had too much money. They had just gone through a round of, I don't know, 35 billion valuation or something. And now they were getting money that they had to put to work, but they didn't know what to do with it. So money's a good thing, but money's a bad thing. And so try and operate like you've got $100 left in the bank account, regardless of what's in there. And just pray that you get to wake up in the morning and that's not really the sun. But if you count on the fact that you've raised $10 million and now you can go do things, you're going to do too many things at once. You're not going to do them well. And you're going to make bad decisions. So time doesn't slow down for anybody. But that doesn't mean that you have to try and do everything at once. It means you need to find a better path. You need to, like I said, this lean startup concept, it makes so much sense. And that's why I talk about it the way I do with passion, is that you can go old school and you'll build a lot of products like I have, bring them to market and have them wipe out. You go new school and you get to know your customers first and you listen to them and you help them improve and enhance your product before you go to market. By the time you go to market, you have a lot of people that are all ready to purchase your product when it's there. And that's the big difference. And so I think that's my last slide, where we are. So why are you still sitting there?
This is great, Scott. Thank you so much. I definitely learned a lot of, there's lots of golden nuggets in there in those stories. So thank you for presenting this and sharing it with us. We did have some questions in the chat, and okay. Just so everyone knows, I am putting my calendar in the chat window, and I'm also going to put my LinkedIn information up there too. So just want to make sure that, you know, if we don't answer your question or you want to do a deeper dive on your business question, that, you know, you can connect with me and I'm happy to answer that.
I'm not in a hurry. So I mean, I just, I'll get boring soon. And yeah. So I'd rather just, and I'd make the mistake of having told you everything before I listen to a question that you asked me. So I'd rather stop and let you ask questions, and then maybe I can provide some good answers.
Yeah. Alex had a question. Alex, I'm not sure if I can say your name properly, your last name properly, but why don't you go ahead and take yourself off mute and ask Scott your question.
I think you already did a great presentation on it. I had, when I was surveying a product I'm relaunching, I actually did some boots on the ground where I was taught at the USC School of Business Entrepreneur Program. And if you're scared to talk to people, that's like, unless you have a colleague that works with you that gets in front of people, that's not too good. I actually went to airports and walked around and asked the recipient end users, what do you think of this? Does this look good? Does it look bad? What do you like? What do you dislike? That's very much like boots on the ground, essentially walking and talking with your prospective buyers to tell you what they like or dislike, correct? Same thing, but absolutely, just under a different name, right?
It's just, but it's the questions you ask. I did a project, one of my earliest ones, I built a chain of specialty stores for new parents called Beyond Conception. And I went out, I went out and I talked to all these women that were pregnant. First couple of weeks, I really wasn't getting a real strong feeling for what would work or what wouldn't and why. And then I changed my conversation and I started asking, what's being pregnant? What is it like being pregnant? What are the good parts? What are the bad parts? You know, and I meet them on little league fields and things like that. So I'd have one child. I'd say, listen, my wife's pregnant. I got to figure out how to do this a little better than I did the first time. Tell me, what do you enjoy? What's your favorite part about being a mom or dad? And what are some of your horror stories? People like to talk about themselves. It's not just being able to have the guts to go up and talk to them. It's critical how you engage them. If that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, Alex, I kind of want to throw in a few more, my 2 cents too. And it is important how you ask the question and not to bias the results. For example, if you walked up to someone and say, hey, would you like this coffee cup? And, you know, they may just say yes, because they want to just be pleasers with you. And so, you know, I like to try to ask behavioral type of questions. You know, for example, if I'm going to talk about this coffee cup, I'm going to say, what do you think? Do you currently own any vacuum sealed coffee cups? And tell me why or why not. And then I understand their behavior. They may say, you know what, I don't see a need for it. I don't care for it. So then they're not really going to be your customer, right? You're not selling, you're actually doing market research. You're trying to understand the behavior and what people value and why they value it. And so you may find someone who says, you know what, I really want something hot all the time. And that might even be a different product. That might even be a coaster and that they put at work, and then it keeps their coffee hot all the time. So it's a whole new product. And again, understanding and listening and not biasing those questions is really important, because yeah, we can easily get into the selling mode, and that's the biggest pitfall. And
so basically, if you have an MVP product, a minimum viable product, of course, and what it could look like, you would ask the open-ended free response questions. Yeah, what do you like? What do you hate? What would you change? No response is a bad response. Essentially that, basically, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's you need to become their friend first before they're going to be honest with you. Seriously, even if you start out as a stranger, they have to like you before they're going to engage in conversation.
Of course.
Lisa had a question, I think.
Hi, yes, I did. First, thank you for this presentation. It was really nice. I asked about if you've heard of the method of building in public, specifically for tech startups, just because I know through this presentation you mentioned about basically doing a lot of this research before going into market. But for my situation specifically, I have an MVP and we're already basically technically in the market, but it's bare bones. And so I love a lot of what you said in this presentation is thinking about how to apply some of those same concepts of like speaking to users, getting that market research. And I have heard of building in public where you're already in the market, but you're working with customers or with the community to build something that's more of that final product.
That's just putting it another way. I completely agree with that. That is kind of the lean startup, which is you're at some point, you know, you're not just sitting there, you're definitely in the marketplace, but you should always be malleable. You should be, you know, at least in those early times, you should be looking at what you have, even though it's people are buying and using it. Those are prototypes. Those are prototypes until you pass that position of you cross over the chasm where your public speaks more than you do. Mm-hmm. Then you're at a finished product or close to it. You may have renditions, But until then, you look at it like you're selling prototypes and learning from everybody who buys one. In fact, build that relationship with them. Let them adopt you. Let them adopt you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have another question. Actually, we got a few more coming in, so that's good. Esther has a question. When asking market research questions, is there a structure that you follow? For example, the mom test. I'm curious what the mom test is. Is it my mom? Is it Esther? Why don't you go ahead and take yourself off mute and let's chat about that one.
All right, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Philip, and thank you so much, Scott, for doing this presentation. So my name is Esther. I'm from Braid Theory. We at Braid Theory, we're an accelerator program and down in LA that does a lot of lean methodology, and we try and empower entrepreneurs to pursue that as well. But yeah, I had a question about your methodology in doing market research questions. And so the MOM test is basically a structure and a way to phrase things in a way that you can extract the correct type of information. And this is just one example of, a methodology that's used in the industry that I've learned in the past. Did you have any tips or tricks on how to kind of get the right information from people as you kind of do lots of market research discovery?
Yes, and I wish I had had it 30 years ago. You don't jump in with anything that's threatening. These people, they might be your best friend, but now you're going in to ask them about business, or it may be somebody you haven't known. But understand that under those circumstances, it's threatening. They have they feel a responsibility to give you answers that you're looking for. And until you can get them not thinking that in that direction, you're wasting your time. You have to, it's a 95-5 rule. And this is really, really true. You spend 95 minutes talking about everything but what you came to talk about, because it's only going to take 5 minutes for them to tell you the truth about what you want to know. But it really is a 95-5. When I used to walk, if I walked into somebody's office, boy, I would look for pictures of kids with soccer uniforms and things like that. And I'd start talking about my kids playing soccer. I look for commonalities and things like that. And I wouldn't get to the point of what is important, like I said, for 95% of the conversation. And that may be over 10 minutes, it may be over an hour. Well, it shouldn't be an hour. Say 30 minutes should be your max. But you should not be on topic for the majority of the time you're talking to somebody. You should be building a relationship that they will trust.
Thank you.
Sure. I also want to add in, so I see when I saw the word structure, I was thinking about when you're doing lean startup, there's the first phase, which is the customer discovery and, all this discussion about really extracting what's important to the customer. Once we have that kind of nailed down, or I should say, once we kind of have an idea, then it's about putting it into a survey form and then sending it out to a mass majority of people. And there is, of course, a structure of the right types of questions to ask, so that way you don't ask too many questions. So, so people actually finish the survey, but, just enough to where it might be hitting those pain points. And anyway, we're really validating all that data that we're collecting. And that's a process called product market fit. And so we kind of move into some more buckets at, each stage as we go along. Before you go out to launch, and then as someone else was mentioning, working with the public. So we're actually talking a lot more, we're talking about, how are we going to insert, this product offering such that we can validate validation is only achieved when we're actually getting a purchase. You know, it's nice that we have. And when I saw your question about mom, I was thinking, yeah, my mom's going to tell me everything's great, you know, and go for it. But I don't want to hear that. I want to hear the people who are paying me money, who are writing me 5-star reviews. That's who I want. That's my customer, you know. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. There's more to it. We're definitely on the 30,000 foot level here. And we can talk about that more, you know, we could set up a time to talk about that more. So thank you for your question. Before
I leave, because we're now going to be running out, we are running out of time.
Okay.
There's a great book out there. I mean, and I collect books that I use as for my textbooks in class. I don't use regular textbooks, the exception being Nail It and Scale It. There's a great book out there called The Pumpkin Plan. And I can't tell you how great it is, how wonderful it is, how it's just so, because it's written a way that they're talking to me. Okay, they're talking to, he's talking to me. He's talking to people like me. He's not preaching at me. And then, because when it gets to that point, it makes such sense. But boy, if you can find it, let me, real quick. Let's see. Pumpkin Plan. Can you see this?
Yep.
I've used it as a textbook actually for several courses when I taught entrepreneurship. My copy is like highlighted from start to finish. No, I mean, and I go back to it all the time. To me, the guy's a genius. So yeah. If I get to recommend one thing, boy, would I take a look at that.
Scott, how much more time do you have? We have one other question, but from Reza, and I know Lisa wants to connect a little bit further too.
Okay, I can take one more question. I teach today at Long Beach State, and I have to be there by 3. So,
okay.
But I have a little time. I'm happy to answer another question.
Okay, I think we're going to go just 5 more minutes, and then we'll have a hard stop. So, Reza, how do you deal with investors' request to the product versus the customer? How do you balance that? Reza, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask further.
Thanks, Philippe, and thank you, Scott. It was a great session. So we're a tech startup, and we're addressing the compromise the maritime industry is facing from using certain fuels. And I was attending a session on a webinar where one of the investors mentioned that, okay, if you add this, we'll invest in you. And I wasn't sure how to deal with that sort of challenge, because I can add that feature, but then if the customer doesn't want it, or they have another, how would I address that? Obviously I can go to another investor, but at this stage it's very hard to get that leverage. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Anytime somebody has a suggestion on a change for your product, instead of running away and thinking they're crazy, those are the people you need to listen to. Not necessarily that you're going to do it, but you need to listen to them with an open mind, whiteboard mind, because you'd be shocked what some people, small little things that you think wouldn't make a difference, are the reason between why somebody bought something or they haven't bought something. And you don't know those things. You really, boy, if I've got an investor who has a suggestion, especially if they're already an investor, but just somebody who comes along and says, you're close, but in order to really reel it in, I need this. Can I come visit you tonight for dinner? I don't wait. I mean, I don't do it on the phone. To that extent, I would get on an airplane. Somebody who says they'll invest if I make a change, I'd think I'd work on it. I'd come up with variations and things like that before I'd get in front of them.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you, Scott.
All right, everyone. Again, thank you, Scott. This was a really amazing. I'm just kind of echoing what everyone else is saying. I did put another note in the chat. Let's connect later. So I probably didn't do my formal introduction about how I run the incubator over at the Cal State Fullerton, but I also teach Lean Startup in there, and we can talk more about that further. So please connect with me there. I put both my LinkedIn in the Calendly, and we'll answer any other questions you have.
You can put my school, my Fullerton email address up. And
Okay.
I'll respond to anybody who sends me a question. Happy to.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let me see if I can squeeze that in here. Or Scott, did you want to write it in the chat?
I can do that.
Might be a little easier.
Let me see. To everyone.
Yeah, and,
Sure.
and while you're writing that in, so for those of you who don't know, we walk people through this whole process of starting a business. It's a 6-month endeavor, and basically we meet with you every week. We monitor your progress. We ask other questions. We give you feedback. We say, okay, go out and go talk to those customers. Tell me what they said, and then next week we kind of have another game plan, and then we keep going until we're actually walking with you as you're building your business, and that's what we do at the Lean Startup. All right. Awesome. All right. Scott's got his email in the chat.
I hope you've enjoyed it. Nothing else. Be well.
For sure.
Everybody.
All right. All right. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.